I call it neutrality. You have to remain neutral, because if you just accept the box that somebody draws for you and you're stuck in this cage, of belief,
Yeah.
and I tell that to patients all day long. I'm like, well, that's why you're here, right? Because you want another opinion,
Yeah.
another idea, and then let's explore this together. And I also have to remain open too. Like they might bring something new to me that I'm not aware of, and I'm like, well, let's look at it.
Yeah.
Because I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And so it's about exploration and neutrality and staying open, and that remaining hopeful. Because when we lose hope, we lose everything.
Right.
And so I tell people, I don't care how old you are or what age you are, the body can heal. And
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. I am your host, Nicolette Richer, and on today's show, we have an incredible human. He is a healer, he is a chemist, he's a scientist, and he is trained in both Eastern and Western medicine. And Scott is somebody who's been through his own healing journey, which started when he was only 18 months old. He started to suffer from epilepsy, and we're going to be taking you through his journey of being diagnosed with epilepsy and as a 9-year-old starting to understand the connection between nutrition and his own health, so that by the time he was 15 years old, he no longer suffered from seizures, and he was studying the science and the art of healing from all angles. So a little bit more about Scott. So he, like I mentioned, he started his health journey when he was only 18 months old. And then ever since, he's made that commitment that if he was able to remove his disease from his own brain, then he would go on for the rest of his life to help others do the same. You're going to learn all about Scott's dad, who's an organic farmer, and his dad's healing journey. And you're going to learn all about how your body is a beautiful, energetic, electrical machine that has the power to heal and completely reverse diseases of all types, no matter how old you are, no matter where you are in the world, you have the power to heal yourself. Now, before we jump into the podcast, I just want to share a little bit about what's happening this summer. We just got back from our 22 million strong tour across British Columbia. It was a tough one. The hills were long and steep, the weather was hot, and the entire time we were basically chasing clear skies because of all the devastating fires that are across BC, Alberta, California, and really so many parts of the world right now are being ransacked by forest fires. So we just want to send out a beautiful thank you and, healing energy to all of the fire crews that are out there on the ground, in the air, that are working around the clock relentlessly trying to put out these wildfires. So if you are playing outdoors, please remember no smoking, no fires, no lighting matches. Do nothing that can trip a fire right now because of the fact these fires are spreading faster and more furiously than ever. What this showed me this summer is that climate change is 100% upon us. For any of you that were potential naysayers in the climate change dialogue, it is upon us. We cannot deny it. The UN is 100% declaring that it is official and that we all need to band together, and we need to start conserving our water. We need to start converting over to plant strong whole foods, because this is one thing that you can do that can help heal the planet. Food production and distribution is one of the biggest contributors to climate change. And simply by eating more vegetables and more fruits and whole grains, you are going to be doing so much to contribute to bettering the planet and bettering your health. So it's a win-win-win all around. Now, if you want to follow us on our 22 million strong training program, please hop on over to our Facebook group, 22 million strong, so you can get access to my upcoming training for yet another year as we prepare to run and cycle across Canada to raise awareness that your body is a healing machine. Your body can reverse chronic disease, but only if you give your body all of the tools that it needs to be able to do so. And that number one tool, especially that is responsible for 95% of chronic illnesses that we are suffering from across this planet, the number one tool is your food. It is your nutrition. So on this podcast, we talk about all the other things that you can do, from, bettering your sleep to moving your body to shifting your mindset. These are all very, very important, but we need to get your nutrition dialed first. And so this is a podcast to learn all about that. So without further ado, let's dive into this show with Scott Sommer and learn all about his healing journey and the magic that he is creating all around the world in helping people reclaim their health and ultimately reclaim their life. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Nicolette Richey, and on today's show, we have Scott Sommer. Very excited to have you on the show, and welcome.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you, especially because our show is all about reversing chronic degenerative illnesses, and you have reversed a condition of your own, and we're going to be diving into that. So what part of the world are you in right now, Scott?
I'm actually in Northern California, actually in a small town called Rockland. And so we're just in Northern California.
Nice. And how are the fires over there right now?
Not great. Every year, pretty much this time of year, we just get, you can't even see the sky right now. It's pretty bad. And so we don't even know where the fires are at this point. There's just so many. So just pray that they'll be put out soon.
Yeah. And I heard that I was on the roads biking for a month, and, I had to bike through all the smoke, and we're constantly trying to escape it because obviously I didn't want to put my lungs and my immune system at risk. And, but it's the same for us too. Like, we have so much land burning, but my coach is in California, and I looked at just what was happening, and I couldn't believe it because it was just at the beginning of July, and 3 times the amount of land was on fire compared to last year in California at the time when I checked. Yeah,
wow.
So it's just,
that's shocking.
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse.
Sure.
So I hope everyone in California is safe and able to, do their best that they can do to not be inhaling that smoke, but it is, affecting everyone across the planet right now.
That's true.
Scott, we have about an hour together here, so I definitely want to get into the work that you do and your healing journey first, and probably what contributed to you doing the work that you do in the world. But let's go back to when you were first diagnosed with epilepsy. When did that start?
Yeah, so basically I was about 18 months old, and my parents, who were very much, my dad was really the influencer in my family into organic farming, and they just observed that when I was outside, when they were working in the garden, that I would have these seizures. And so they brought me to my pediatrician, and he basically, would tell my parents that, I had epilepsy at that age, and that there really wasn't a whole lot that could be done, and that I have to kind of live with this the rest of my life. And then that led to, me being more consciously aware of this disease and how it would affect me in the future. And that was about age 9. And at age 9, I remember meeting with my pediatrician, and he kind of sat me down like he always did. But that day, I remember vividly him saying, you will never have a normal life unless you fix this. And he didn't offer me any cause, which is why I really do what I do today, with patients, is giving them a cause of their problem. And he didn't give me a solution either. And as we know, solutions are important because they empower people when you know what to do about a problem. And
exactly. Yeah. So let's go back because I'm really curious. I mean, I'm a mother of three, and we have 3 kids. We have one that's been in and out of the hospitals, and doctors have no idea why. And then they actually don't get too curious about it. They're just like, oh, okay, we're just going to treat it and move on, but not looking at the pattern. So for your parents at that time too, because you're in your 40s, I'm guessing.
No, I'm actually in my, I'll be 55.
Oh, wow. Okay. You're looking very,
Thank
very
you,
good
though.
and young and
Appreciate the
vibrant.
compliment.
Yes. So, so when you were 18 months old, I mean, we still don't know much about the human body. They say that, overall, we probably know about 3% about how the brain and the human body works. So, what were they offering up as a potential cause of the epilepsy when you were 18 months, or did the doctors just not know?
They just didn't know. Yeah,
Okay.
they
So,
honestly didn't have any clues at all. I think that actually, I did get some vaccines. At that time, there was just a few vaccines back at that time in the 60s that kids would get that were just normal standard, and
mhm,
I think that that was a big part of it. And then there were other factors for me, like I put together a pattern just by between talking to my parents and just observation. One was dehydration,
mm,
and so that was always because I'd work on my dad's farm, growing up on his farm. If I got
yeah,
dehydrated, that would always trigger an episode. The second thing was just getting too much heat, too much sun,
yeah,
almost like a heat stroke, was the other thing. And then the other part was food, and blood
yeah,
sugar. And I realized over time that really high fat, ketogenic diet, of course, is really the antidote.
right.
Lorenzo's Oil, the
Yeah,
movie, is really the antidote for epilepsy. And so those are the
yeah,
3 clues that I had. And then also the fourth was getting tired. If I
right.
got too run down, if I didn't get enough sleep, then my brain would just kind of shut down. And which I know a lot of people can relate to.
Mhm.
But when you lose power completely in an epileptic seizure, it's just really debilitating,
Yeah,
shocking to the body and mind, and it's really scary.
yeah.
There's a lot of fear that goes along with that.
Yeah, my youngest brother, I have 3 brothers. My youngest brother, he used to suffer from seizures as well. And, after a long day of skiing, getting to the car and then driving in the car for an hour and a half, and he would have a seizure. And it would be, but with his were very, very mild. So a lot of the times they were undetected until, of course, he'd have a bigger one. And then we'd go in, and then the doctors would do brain scans and tell us that, oh, yeah, he's had multiple seizures actually over you know, the course of the year or something like that. And how often were you getting seizures?
I can't say that I really remember the frequency of them. But I would say on average in the beginning, they happen often as an infant. And then once I figured out the pattern, my dad would always give me a hat, a bee hat, that a beekeeper would wear, in the sun. And then, so that really helped to slow them down. But they really continued up until about age 12 or 13. And
Mhm.
then finally at age 15 is when there was a tipping point, between because I got into fitness, I started working out as well. My dad got me a weight bench. And so I lifted weights every day. I really got into fitness, biking every day to school. And it was at age 15 that I walked into a hospital to be retested because they continually tested brain waves, with
Mhm.
EEG. And I remember that day vividly, that going into the hospital feeling like, a test you couldn't study for,
Mhm.
and hoping that you would pass, because I knew that this would determine whether or not the rest of my life, whether or not I could drive
Yeah.
and just do simple things like just function in society and have a real life.
Yeah.
And so I remember after it seemed like at the time, like 3 hours of testing, and I was surrounded by nurses and doctors. And finally, they were just puzzled. I remember looking at their faces, how puzzled they were about the results. And they finally looked at me and they said, "There's really no evidence anymore of any problems with your brain." and
Wow.
we release you, and we don't know why you had your problems. We don't know why you're better, but good luck. And I remember just
Hmm.
leaving that day with just such a victory. And to me,
Yeah.
it was an answer to a prayer,
Yeah.
really, because it was something I was pleading for help,
Yeah.
not knowing where to turn. And yet, fortunately, I had the answers before me on the farm that my
Right.
dad had, which was 5 acres, which wasn't far from here. It's maybe a 30-minute drive. So it's in basically Northern California.
And yeah, so let's talk about that because did your parents have your parents had an organic farm while you were growing up, or is that something that your dad started later?
No, he actually started it before I was born.
Okay.
And so to kind of segue into his story,
Hmm.
because that's important, that he pretty much, so I basically, there's 3 generations of sickness of men in my family. I was one of them. And my dad was born with a bad leg. He had varicosities, varicose veins along
Hmm.
his leg, and his leg was weak because of circulation and other reasons that they couldn't explain. So he sometimes had to stay in bed for 6 months at a time.
Oh,
So
wow.
his leg would swell to 3 times its size. And then I had a grandfather on my mom's side, her father, who was also born with double pneumonia, if you can imagine, really sick. And he had problems with his spine, and he had to retire early from the military at about age 35. So it was my dad that really got us out of all this. He basically pursued reading magazines. He had, was reading about this guy that was kind of into fitness, and most people don't know him at all because it was back in the 1880s.
Oh, yeah, tell me
And
about him.
yeah, so his name was Bernard. Let's see, Bernard, basically. I'll have to remember his last name.
Yeah.
And McFadden, Bernard McFadden, and he
Okay.
was born in the 1850s, and he had a similar story to all of us. And basically, he was born sick, and then he ended up on a farm in Vermont, and he was adopted because both of his parents died at an early age.
Okay.
They just didn't take care of themselves, so he became an orphan because of the sad conditions of their bodies
Hmm.
of his parents. So anyway, my dad was inspired by this man because he worked on the farm, Bernard, and he became so strong and healthy by eating the food and
Hmm.
working on the farm, the fitness and the farm, which is what I believe the gift that my dad gave to me was
Yeah.
fitness and farming. And so he was inspired by this man. And so he looked for fitness and started lifting weights. And he became fascinated with tractors and the soil. And so my dad was really got into soil and composting. And so he
Wow.
ended up coming to California, meeting his dad for the first time when he was about 19 or 20. And so this was the tipping point for all of us was my dad found his dad dead from a heart attack,
Hmm.
and it was because of food. And so here, his dad was eating, the grandfather I never met was eating, processed foods, pizza, chow mein,
Hmm.
and Chinese food, and it killed him. And he was only 55. He was basically my age,
Wow.
and he had this massive heart attack. And my dad had just found him as his father, pretty much, and then he lost him. And so he
Wow.
made the decision that day when when they came and took his dad away that he had to do something different in his life. Otherwise, he would end up just like his father.
Yeah.
And so he did. So he went and bought some land, 5 acres, and he was the worst land you could ever imagine. It was beautiful as far as where it was located,
Yeah.
but it was hard pan. So it's what we
Right.
call dirt. It was
Yeah.
truly dirt. It wasn't soil.
Right.
And so he transformed it over, 3 to 5 years. He brought in compost and tractors, and it was the most richest soil over the last 45, 50 years.
Wow.
As I was growing up as a child, the soil just became richer and richer. So he grew nuts and fruit trees of every kind.
Yeah.
He grew every vegetable you could ever imagine, and it was just the Garden of Eden. And so that's where I grew up. And so
That's
as I
amazing.
ended up with my epilepsy, and then ended up on the farm, I just ended up, picking and living off all the food that restored my body and my brain.
Yeah.
and then learning about fitness through the bodybuilding, which was the other piece that my dad got into, which was lifting weights. So he met one of the first person that bodybuilder in Sacramento. His name was Bill Pearl, and he started one of the first gyms in Sacramento area. And nowadays, we think of just going to, there's so many gyms to choose from, but back then it was like the gym,
Yeah.
and it would be like Gold's Gym, and so he trained him, and he said, you should be in competition. And so he became Mr. Sacramento. He won second place, and that was
Wow.
like back in the 60s, before I was born. And then my
And how
parents
was his
met.
leg at that point?
He actually restored his leg, and great, as long as he worked out and ate the food that he did.
Yeah.
And about the same age as me, about age 15, he found ways to improve his health.
Yeah.
He was very aware of his body. And so all of these tools he had between fitness and farming, and his leg, and I treated him later on in life, once I became a practitioner of acupuncture and Asian medicine and nutrition. I treated him every week, and when he was alive, and he lived a long, healthy life.
Yeah, that is a really beautiful story, especially because I say, the true heroes on our planet truly are the farmers, because, yes, we all breathe. But the other thing that we universally all do is we eat, hopefully for most of us, we're getting 3 meals a day in Western countries. And, in some other countries, they're lucky if they get a meal a day. But, still we need to eat as human beings. And that's the part that unites us all. And farmers are the ones that are out there doing that hard work and growing the food. But beyond growing the food, they have to be scientists as well. They have to understand, commune with nature. They need to know about the soil. They need to know about the air and the wind and the temperatures and the climates and pH balance. And so they really are, to me, like heroes. And I think they're the heroes that are taken for granted, because most people just go to the grocery store, and there's people who don't even know that. I met somebody recently who, was telling me that she brought a friend of hers into her garden and picked carrots to give to her, just as a gift, to say, take these carrots home and enjoy them. And this woman and her 2 children had no idea that carrots came out of the ground at all. And
Wow.
I'm sure you probably meet people who just have no idea where food comes from. But there's an interesting part about your story, because I just cannot help feeling and relating to it, in the sense that, the doctors couldn't explain what was happening with my daughter. They couldn't explain what was happening with you. But because of that experience, it drove me into research and into healthcare and into food as medicine and into making these discoveries, which then enables you and I to go out there and help so many other people. So, sometimes we don't know what the true cause of it was, and maybe it was just lack of nutrition and dehydration. But, the fact that I love that that became your catalyst into what you do now. So one thing I want to know, so when the seizures stopped happening, and you said around age 9, when the doctors are like, you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life. Tell me about how you started to understand nutrition better. Like, what did that look like? Because for most people who are now doing keto, a lot of people don't know the story that it was discovered that a keto diet helped people with epilepsy first and foremost. That's what it was used as. But tell me about how you started to learn about that.
Yeah, so it was just part of my world. It was just like, that's all I knew. My dad, I remember, he just had, fresh water as an example. He always had a distiller.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then he studied Bernard Jensen, who was a really amazing nutritionist.
Yeah.
And so it was through his experiences that he shared with me. And then Adele Davis was the other nutritionist in the 60s, that some people know of. And then, Jack LaLanne was our other hero. So
Yeah.
Jack LaLanne was kind of like our fitness guru that we followed. And so we had this in common. And then the more that I listened to my dad, the more I started reading books when I was about 10. and the books was like Del Davis,
Mhm.
um, Let's Get Well, and it was just life changing for me because I just felt like I just dove into this. Um, like you said, it was really the struggle was the gift. And
Right.
so it's just like I just became so consumed with looking for answers that I'm a tenacious person,
Yes, I can
and
tell.
I just don't give up. Anyone that knows me, that you tell me not to do something or you can't do this, that just doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
And
and this
so,
I think is, I just have to jump in there because I
yeah,
believe that this is actually really important for our listeners to understand because most people at one point in their life will be faced with a condition where their doctors will say, you are going to have live with this for the rest of your life. I mean, we know, people who are paralyzed and said, okay, well, you're going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. You are going to be an amputee for the rest of your life, but it doesn't have to define your life, right? And you do not have to accept what they say as the final prognosis. And we've seen it over and over again. People are given 3 months to live and then they end up living 20, 2 more years. I entered into the world of nutrition through a friend of mine whose dad reversed his cancer after being given 3 months to live, and he lived 22 more years. And this is the part where I think I would have to stress it's probably one of the most important parts about being a human is that you don't allow other people to define you, to dictate your life for you. You have to be willing to say, like, that is not acceptable. I am going to charge forward and I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to hang on to hope. Like sometimes we view hope as being this thing like, oh, you shouldn't have hope in certain like dire situations, particularly around health. But no, you do need that. And so I just think that that is a remarkable thing that you did at such an early age. And then the second part about your story, which I think people just, I want to really accent this, is that you just started doing research. You just started reading and you got curious, opposed to handing over your life to the doctors and saying, okay, well, they'll do the research for me and they have all the answers. And because doctors don't have all the answers. And it's really important for people to know this. So I just think what you did at a young age is really remarkable.
well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's important. I like what you said, about I call it neutrality. You have to remain neutral, because if you just accept the box that somebody draws for you and you're stuck in this cage, of belief,
Yeah.
and I tell that to patients all day long. I'm like, well, that's why you're here, right? Because you want another opinion,
Yeah.
another idea, and then let's explore this together. And I also have to remain open too. Like they might
Right.
bring something new to me that I'm not aware of, and I'm like, well, let's look at it,
Yeah.
because I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's about exploration and neutrality and
Hmm.
staying open, and that remaining hopeful. Because when we lose hope, we lose everything.
Right.
And so I tell people, I don't care how old you are or what age you are, the body can heal. And I have a great story actually to share of a
Yes, I'd
patient
love to.
that I just saw literally 2 hours ago. And so she was affected by all the smoke we talked about earlier. She's in her 70s, and she was really into health and nutrition most of her life. And everyone thought she was like a health nut, which is a common term of the 60s,
Yeah.
hippie. And yet all of a sudden her lungs were damaged by the fires. And
Right.
she didn't even smoke, but she ended up with emphysema.
Hmm.
So a terrible lung condition. She had to be on oxygen that she'd have to take around with her throughout her house. She couldn't go to the store. She was just tied to this like an umbilical cord. And that seemed to be her life. And then through a patient of mine who was her niece referred her to me. And we sat down and we looked at the oxygen tank and we're like, well, let's do something about it. You know, she says, oh, really? Because I have emphysema and this is, my label and
Hmm.
this is what I've been given. This is my sentence. And I'm like, well, I've helped hundreds of patients overcome this. And then all of a sudden she got a little more hope, you know. I said, you know, it'd be different if I hadn't had experience with this, but I've seen hundreds of people overcome lung conditions,
Yeah.
even as serious or more serious than yours. And so why don't we just stay open and then see what you need? I'll give you what your body needs and then stand back and wait for the miracle. And that's my philosophy, you know, and of life, you
Mhm.
know. And so she just came in today, no oxygen tank, completely gone. Doctor says her lungs are like 60% better. They can't
Wow.
believe it. They don't really even consider her having, it's almost like light asthma. She still has to be aware of the smoke, you know, so I've taught her about limitations and,
Hmm.
you know, but now she swims 2 hours a day.
Wow.
She exercises. She incorporates, you know, all the great food. I've told her which foods to eat for her lungs, and she's like a different person. And
Yeah.
she got her life back, you know. But if she had believed that she would have to stay on this oxygen tank the rest of her life, she would probably just sit in front of the TV
Yeah.
with oxygen, not making a difference. And now with this new vitality, her joy in life, besides, you know, her family, of course, is her joy. She's
Yeah.
able to go down south to LA and visit her grandson, who's 4 years old. And that's the really the love of her life, you know.
Yeah.
And but she wouldn't make that trip very easily. She would be tired and unable to live life. So
Yeah.
now she's living life fully and with nutrition and the right diet, and her lungs are healing. So we had this discussion today. She says, "Do you think I can get even better?"
Yeah.
I said, "Why not? I
Yeah.
mean, why do you feel, you know, why would your lungs not keep going?" I said,
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, how much more your lungs can heal. Sometimes damage is damage, but let's keep going." And she's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I said, "Okay, hop on the table," you know, and I test her for more supplements. And then today I helped her at another level. We found that her, you know, heart and lungs go together, oxygen, pumping oxygen throughout the body. So I have something called a heart sound recorder,
Yeah.
which is a technique that I use to measure the sounds of the heart valves.
Right.
It's an advanced technique that goes back to the 1930s, the original technology. And so then I found that she needed some special B vitamins, something called B4,
Yeah.
and all food based. You know, it's made from nutritional yeast, which is something that I studied my whole life.
Yeah.
With Adele Davis is desiccated liver, you know,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Nutritional yeast and like anyway, I have a story on that and later. But so anyway, so so we realized that that was the next step for her, and so now we're feeding her heart to feed her lungs, and
Yeah.
she's off and running to see her grandson again.
And this is the part, like this, I love this story so much because there are so many people right now who are in her exact same situation. So maybe it's not about the lungs, maybe it's about, another chronic illness, and lifestyle illness, but where these individuals, like I could just picture, there's basically 220,000, no, sorry, 220 million people in North America that are currently in that situation that have been diagnosed with a chronic disease. And every single day they put the pill in their mouth. They probably have to get prescribed another pill, within a few months to within a couple years. Many of them are taking, up to 35 prescription drugs. They are, sitting there in pain, no energy, thinking that this is it for them. Like this is how they're going to live. And I'm in the same position. I teach people how to reverse their chronic diseases using food. And then when they do it, to me, I always think like, wow, that was a miracle because of the fact that that person chose to not be that other person who could have decided to just do nothing and could have just decided, that this is your bout in life and this is what you've been given. And so there's nothing you can do. And so the part too that I love about this is that this happens fast. Would you say like the body heals so fast that you could literally be in this situation where it's like you can't walk, you can't go see your grandchild, you can't, some people can't even leave their house, to literally being an athlete and swimming again and traveling and really, like you said, getting your life back. It is remarkable how fast it happens. And it's not, it doesn't take years to get your life back. It literally can take days and weeks and just a couple months to get that back.
That's so true. Yeah, it really is true. If people really dive into it, and if you work the program,
Yeah.
it really will transform. And I call it wheels, of healing. So it's like if you have this big tractor wheel, most people that are really sick and a lot of medications that are just so slow to heal. It takes a
Mhm.
long time for one cycle to heal your skin and your brain and your heart. But there's so many things you can do to speed up the process and shorten the wheel.
Yeah.
Because, like when we're born as infants, typically we have a healthy body and then we have a small little wheel. It's just like really fast.
Yeah.
It's like infants just heal quickly,
And they
they just
grow
don't.
quickly and they regenerate
Yep,
quickly. And yeah, it's amazing.
exactly. Yeah. So we just need to learn how to make that wheel smaller through lifestyle and diet. And remember that
Yeah.
the foundation is really food, like you mentioned. It's the key, and
Yeah.
it's really what's changed since about the 1900s is, processed white flour and
Yeah.
white sugar and those B vitamins I was talking about earlier are
Yeah.
just stripped, and from our diets. And then we wonder what happened,
Yeah.
wonder why. And most people just don't make the link, because it's such
Yeah.
it can also be a gradual process with food of getting sick,
Yeah.
eating the wrong diet, but yet getting the right diet back in can be very rapid when we dive in fully.
Exactly. Yeah, it can take you 40 years to create your illness, but it can take you just a couple weeks to a couple months to like you really like reverse it and be feeling amazing. So I have a question for you about because you studied chemistry, so you're a chemist as well. And I'm very curious about what that was like for you to study chemistry, because you had already discovered how to heal yourself. You already understood the relationship between food and your body. Food was medicine to you. You knew about hydrating the body. So what was that like for you to study chemistry with all of these other students who, maybe were studying chemistry so they can get into med school? So it was basically like, let's just get this course done and let me pass it. And let's hope I can remember the formulas just so they can, progress to their ultimate goal of, wherever that was going to lead them. Because I know when I did my pre-med sciences, after learning all of this, it was like, it's written in the books. Like our body needs nutrients and the nutrients have to come for food. So I just want to get your perspective on that.
Sure, absolutely. So really what happened to me was there was a division in my mind between, I love to learn. I've always,
Mhm.
my grandmother was that way, had a German grandmother, my dad's mom that was just, she would just wake up in the middle of the night just reading, a ravenous reader,
Wow.
and she was a Toastmaster and up into her 90s, and so that just runs in my family. And so I just figured that, I started off in college and I studied with this great interest in chemistry. And so I got a degree in chemistry but I realized that on the side, I had this gift, of healing because I'd
Mhm.
healed myself. And then I had this, I was just kept reading these books on nutrition, but I couldn't make the connection between how do you make a living, a career and
Yeah.
this gift and how do they come together? So I said, well, I'll just, get a career, make some money and make a living. And then I'll keep going with my nutrition and find a way to help people. Because that
Yeah.
was my goal after healing myself was that, and being healed was to help other people, share the message.
Yeah.
So,
And
yep.
no, just the one part about that. When you were in school, because you also had this story, where did you find it easy to relate to the other students? And, did you share that story with the other students? And I'm just curious about what, they were thinking about you and what you thought about, them, and as well as your professor as well. Because if your professor hadn't had a story of using food as medicine to heal themselves, then chemistry can sometimes be this external reductionist, view on life versus, this view on holism, which I'm sure you were sitting in class understanding the interconnection between everything, which perhaps your classmates didn't have.
Yeah, that's really true. So, in my, early years of college, I would say that it was just more of an interest in learning and growing in chemistry, but I didn't really have the dialogue, So that's the other thing. I think that people need to learn how to express their story, after they've had a miracle, they need to share it. And I just was, I was actually kind of considered the black sheep of the family, actually, to be honest, it was considered my condition, my parents were very supportive of me, but it was the other relatives that, I started to doubt the concept of sharing this story, until I grew older in college and I had more knowledge. Then I realized that, I kind of realized that this was a blessing. And so, but it wasn't until later on, after I was at Davis, after chemistry and then engineering, because I kept going with science and I was just falling in love with how things worked, and how to put things together and how they're connected. Because then I was like, wow, that's so interesting because the body's like this too over here. I was reading these nutrition books, like only if I could connect this, this apple with these electrical circuits, transformers. But at the time I didn't know how. And so then I ended up as a pre-med student at Davis and I finally got back on track. And I'm like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to become an MD and then I'll jump the fence. And because I have all this knowledge, and I didn't know how else to practice medicine without a license, it doesn't work in that way. And so I ended up at Davis in biochemistry. So I studied a lot of chemistry earlier, engineering, and then finally biochemistry. And it was there, you're right, that I, realized that everybody was just trying to pass a class and it wasn't about connecting, the human body with disease and wellness. It was just, there was no connections. It was just all segmented thought, And so I read this book on Asian medicine and it was in the bookstore at UC Davis and it changed my life forever. It just talked about, nutrition and Asian medicine was different than I'd ever heard of from my dad or anything else. So it was like another viewpoint of nutrition. And then they talked about the body being electric. And I thought, wow, that's like the body's electric. Makes sense. And that made sense about my brain, being healed and that there's electrical circuits. And so, so that led to a shift and I had to take a leap of faith. And at that moment, I said, I'm going to study nutrition because I thought to myself, how can I help people the most? Well, I don't know how I'm going to use this degree. I definitely don't want to work at Campbell's Soup, because that's actually what the people that I studied with, my associates and college students, they were studying to become nutritionists and dietitians at Campbell's Soup. And I said that, I needed to use it in a different way. No discredit to anyone on that end. But so I ended up studying nutrition and I got a degree at Davis. And then from there, I felt like I had the building blocks of how the body worked, the physiology, anatomy, and how the biochemistry was coming together. So I was building this art and science and bringing them together as two worlds becoming one. And then I went to Eastern Medical School and I looked up and down the state, as to the best schools and ended up in San Diego. And it was there that my teachers taught me about a whole nother viewpoint of the body's electrical system. And there's 1,000 points in the body. And I studied nutrition from a different viewpoint of foods being hot and cold and dry and wet and conditions that match that and how I could align food with conditions to heal the body. And and that's really where, things started to come together and kind of melt together and like a molten, journey in my life.
And this is the part too that I love about, having studied the chemistry, the engineering, the biochemistry, and then having studied, these Eastern medicines as well, because of the fact that I find sometimes in the West, it's almost like a esoteric understanding of medicine when we talk about Eastern medicine, and we talk about moving energy and we talk about, not eating damp foods for certain conditions, or we talk about not burning out your fires, and for some people, when they hear this, it can make it seem woohoo, when in fact, if anybody understands how life works, biology, chemistry, biochemistry, physics work, when we use this language, it is accurate. Your body is an electrical machine. It is, your calories that you're eating, this is actually physical heat that you're consuming, and your body is using that. And then also, delivering heat out that needs to escape the body. Like, these are measurable things in the world of physics and chemistry. And, the thing that I find is that I love what you said, the merging of the art and science behind this, because it is 100% accurate. There's no division. The science has always been there in Eastern medicine, which is thousands of years old, but it's also how we communicate about it too. And that's where I love having studied, I did my pre-med courses and realized medicine, I wasn't going to go down the route of medicine, but I was so fortunate and feel so grateful that I had that understanding, because now when I'm teaching, I can, depending on what my clients need or what the audience needs, you can pull from that and then also bring together, it's like the meeting of the East and the West, and realizing actually we're talking about the same thing.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a wonderful summary. That's so true. You need a language, a foundation.
Yeah.
And and I really believe that that's what doctors used to be, is the country doctor that I've created in my practice. The concept is that it really was an art, at one time, where they actually observe somebody, their face complexion and tongue and different things, which is part of Asian medicine.
Touch them, right? We don't
touch them. Exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore.
Different smells and like an observation, and so there's the scientist, but the artist too, that applies personalized care to each individual. And so that's wonderful what you're doing and how you're helping people. That's great.
Yeah, it's what you're doing too. So I just have to say thank you for doing that, because we definitely need a lot more people out there in the world that are going to do that. And also Eastern practitioners who explain the science to their patients, because, it's a lot of people don't feel very well. Like, and when I say that, I don't mean in fact of being sick, but they actually can't feel. So they might go to acupuncture, and acupuncture can be a very healing, moving experience. But some people are just so in their head that they're actually not feeling the energy, the pulses, the electrical charge, or the release of the energy in a particular part of their body. But once they actually start to get connected to their body, then they can see how powerful it is. And it's not a pie in the sky idea. It's actually literally moving energy through the body, and you're actually getting blood flow into your microcapillaries. And so if the, Eastern doctor can explain that to the patient, then that person is going to stick with it. They're not just going to say, well, I tried it once and it didn't work. Because it's sometimes you need to go a few times, and you need to actually be able to, actually physically feel it. And then when you feel it, you actually end up feeling better as well. So let's talk about the energy piece, because I would love for you to explain that a little bit more. I love how you say your body is a battery, and how to handle the body's electrical system. So let's talk about that, and how can people do that? Because I know when people are listening, they're just like, okay, tell me what to do. So what are some things that people can do to better understand that, but also bring some practices into their life?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So Qigong, the practice of breathing and movement, is something I've done for more than 30 years.
Wow.
And so what that really helped me do was to figure out. So once I healed myself and was healed, then basically I had to learn about the electrical system. And so before I knew about Qigong, I would just, feel my hands back and forth like an accordion, bringing them back and forth, almost like two magnets, and that's the first thing you can do to kind of experiment and become aware. We all need to raise our awareness. Like, what am I really feeling right now? Why is my right foot painful? And then kind of what I call breathing through things, because breath, we say that the mind moves chi, and chi is just defined as energy, electricity. We have electricity in our house, right? And then we have circuits that work really well, like say all your lights work in your kitchen and your house, but maybe there's one set of lights that, circuits that don't work in your kitchen. And so our bodies are no different. There's always things moving or blocked or deficient. So we're either lacking power or things are blocked. And so that's like energy flow. So you need to understand that we're electric. We have to be. Every cell is connected. It's not like you just have your heart setting on the table and your kidneys are over on the living room. They're all connected. But, Western mind says that they're, disconnected because they've done these autopsies, or, this is where the kidneys belong. And so I believe that's important to have a different way of thinking, that you're connected fully. And then you need to keep those connections going to be healthy, both your mind, body, and spirit. And so the best thing to do is to start with water. And so what I can recommend is just get filtered water, spring water, but water has to be clean and purified.
Yeah.
And then a pinch of salt, Himalayan salt or black salt. Experiment with salt. Salt is really powerful in small quantities. It was given to soldiers back in the 1800s to fight battles. They actually gave it to them as a ration to give them energy, because they knew if they lost their electrolytes, they couldn't fight the battle.
Yeah.
So is that important? And now, we see commercials on TV where, salt is bad, but real salt, in real filtered water is a place to start, and just kind of experiment, like, start drinking enough water to where you start going to the bathroom, urinating every 2 hours, because typically at that level, your body has enough water, hydration, as long as you're not completely clear, on your urine, but you want it to be straw colored and going every 2 hours or so. Then, you've got enough water. And then you kind of take a journal where you write down how you're feeling, because you'll notice your mental clarity will increase. You'll have less pain. You'll have more vitality, and you just feel different with 8 to 10 cups of water, or half your body weight in ounces, than you do with, I just had a patient, this is a perfect example of an electrical problem, a patient that came to me that I've been treating for heart disease, helping with heart disease. And we've been reversing with diet and supplements, and he got his life back, and he had been doing drugs for 50 years. And now he's like 72.
Yeah.
And so he was so deprived of nutrition from all the drugs, his lifestyle, that we've, filled in the gaps, and he still has a ways to go. It's only been 2 years since he's been off of drugs. But the point was, he ended up in the hospital because they found him one Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, in bed, just like he couldn't think. He couldn't remember his family. And it was as if he was in Alzheimer's.
Right.
It's like he fell into dementia or Alzheimer's. And then he went to the hospital. And this is the concept of, this type of thinking, and so he did an MRI, they did CT scans, they did blood work. And the only thing they found was elevated white blood cells. Okay, so there's an infection.
Yeah.
And I suspect it was a bladder kidney infection.
Right.
And then they sent him home. They said, there's nothing wrong with you. We have found nothing wrong with you. Go home and live your life. So fortunately, he knows, he's a patient still, and his mom brought him back in, who happens to be healthy and alive. She's like 95 now. And we've been treating her for years. She's jumping out of planes, and just like amazing person, has her own garden, and she lives life fully, and like we all should. And so finally I had a consult with this patient, and I said, so how much water do you drink? And he said, well, about 2 of those bottles over there. And it was like 2 pints of water. And I said, that's all you drink? Because he plays outside, he does martial arts, he sweats, he's out in the sun. And I said, do you realize that that can't even prime the pump? You can barely, your blood's going to get thick, your brain won't work, and you had an electrical collapse. That's what happened to you. And after all those expensive MRIs and thousands of dollars, what really you need is electrolytes. So I told him to start drinking coconut water and putting pinches of salt, in his water, and drinking a minimum of 8 to 10 cups slowly. When somebody doesn't drink water, they have to slowly work up to it because it's hard on their body, And so sure enough, that's an example of an electrical short.
Yeah.
So start with water.
And a lot of the side effects from it, it's going to show up differently in everybody. Some people might be more susceptible to feeling like they have brain fog, other people memory loss, other people cramping in their muscles, other people, just feeling depressed. And, so for everybody, it's going to be different. And so people need to understand that. But hydration for sure should be the number one question every health practitioner asks. And they don't ask that. No, very few, like rarely will a doctor say, so how much water are you drinking? And how many meals did you eat today? And tell me about those meals, and tell me how many hours of sleep you got. Like that's the basic questions that should be asked. And unfortunately, it's like, they jump to conclusions, especially as you get older as well. It's like, oh, you're 72. Like, this could just be early onset Alzheimer's. And then before you know it, you start getting treated for that. So it's really important for people to go back to the basics. And I love this because it's a very simple, what you're suggesting. Okay, so this is about moving energy. Let's go back to Qigong, because I just want to make sure people know, like, we're going to have this in the show notes, but Qigong is spelled Qigong. And this is something that you can do from home. You could watch YouTube videos, you can learn how to do this. And at first it might feel like nothing is happening, but Qigong is very powerful. And I have met many health practitioner, physicians, medically trained doctors who are actually prescribing Qigong to their patients. So just tell us a little bit more about that, because I just want people to, when they listen, that they know where they can get more information about Qigong and how to apply it into their life.
Yes, absolutely. So Qigong is basically a form of martial arts in slow motion. And so you've seen, like in China, where they're up on the hill in the morning in a park, and that's what it looks like, just a graceful movement. So it's really about, in fact, they even use it in hospitals in China, where they have a whole floor dedicated to breathing exercises. So, we talked about earlier about pH and the soil. Well, the pH of the body really has to do with the soil, and our soil is our blood, our oxygen. And so you can literally change your pH and change your oxygen and your whole body, just by breathing differently. And it slows down stress, it removes stress from the body, which is why exercise, meditation are examples of changing your breathing. But Qigong is really focused breathing with movement. So an example would be, look like you'd see somebody pushing their hands forward and backward across from their chest, and they're breathing in a certain rhythmical fashion to be able to drive more oxygen and calm their nervous system. So it really calms your mind, and it goes from like a turbulent storm in your mind and your body to like a lake of peacefulness. And it's pretty amazing. It's actually life-changing. And so I learned that at Asian medical school.
Amazing. And this is something that I think, corporations can bring in, and, they could have their employees do this for 20 minutes or even just 10 minutes a day would be so beneficial. And then in schools for children as well. Like, this is really important, and teachers can bring this into their classrooms. And if anything, the number one thing that I think that's beautiful about it is it just teaches people how to breathe, because we do not breathe in our society very well. So this is really powerful. So can we jump to the nutrition, because you've tapped into how nutrition healed you, healed your dad. But we're living in a world where, pretty much anything goes for nutrition. I had a doctor prescribe nutrition to one of my clients and said, because they were starting to eat clean, so they were losing weight. And the doctor was like, "You're losing weight. This must be because you're not eating well," when in fact it was actually because they were eating well. And they were still overweight. And the doctor panicked and said, "I need you to get more fats in your diet. So I need you to eat Lay's potato chips." And, this person has cancer, and the oncologist is saying, "Eat Lay's potato chips." And another doctor prescribed Haagen-Dazs to one of my clients said, "It'll help bring in your breast milk more because I don't think the baby's eating enough." Haagen-Dazs ice cream, really? Like, are they sponsored by these companies? So
Right.
Let's talk about nutrition, because it is confusing. And right now we are in a keto craze where people are just like, eating tons of animal fat and pouring lots of refined oils on their food and minimize not eating any carbohydrates and, thinking that that is nutrition. And when we're now seeing the effects of that on people's health. So let's dive into this hot topic.
Awesome. My favorite topic of all.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah, I would say the first, I like to teach principles, and I have a lot of analogies, and I'm writing a book, which will be coming out in
Right.
November. But I would say, think of nutrition like clothes. We wear clothes, more clothes for protection, for support, and especially when we have a harsh climate. So if you lived in Alaska or somewhere where there's a lot of storms, and like Russia in the winter, Siberia, then you would obviously need a lot of clothing. And it wouldn't be like one pair of clothing, like just putting on good socks. You'd have to, layer your body with clothes to protect your feet, your head, your eyes, and your chest, and the rest of your body. And so that's the way food is. Food should be looked at like eating the rainbow of many different colors. And probably the best thing to think of as a salad. So many times people get tired of salads, or they're not interested in salads. But, salad is defined really, in my opinion, like something raw, something organic, something local, natural, and something that's living. So, the minute if we cook all of our food, then we lose a lot of enzymes, and those enzymes are really what keep us alive. And so you have to add vitality back to your body. And that's the purpose of food, is to give us life, keep our life going, and protect us, and then also promote detox, some form of detox. So there's three major reasons. And just like clothes are the same thing. They protect us, they support us, and then when you go to the gym and you sweat, you wear different clothes, and that promotes detox.
Yeah.
And so it's the same concept. So I think that that's the first step, is to think of clothes as protection.
Yeah.
And so, how much can a pizza protect you?
Right.
Or a block of cheese, or, salami, or, something that's processed. So all these keto foods like you're talking about, we have to stop and think and have a little more discussion with, like how much can bacon protect you? A slab of bacon. I'm not saying that bacon's bad necessarily, but it just doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it. It's just fat, animal fat, and some protein. But, like I recently saw some at the store, some bacon, the way bacon looks now. From what I remember as a kid, we never really ate bacon, but it's just full of fat. There's just like a slab of fat. And the animals are affected by, what we feed them, all the GMO corn and feed. So you have to also eat close to the ground. I always say eat close to the ground, like, like an apple is an apple if it's organic, and something that has no label on it is the best thing. Try to eat foods without labels. Like it's an apple, it's kale, salad.
One ingredient food.
Right.
Yes.
One ingredient food. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, apple sauce is not an apple. It's been pulverized, beaten, and, stripped of nutrition. And so we have to realize that we don't have to rely on all of these, different processings to get food. I mean, it can be that simple. Sit down and have an avocado and put some salt on it. I mean, that's some of the meals that I eat are just simple. Right. And so you don't have to be a chef. You can just find some real food and eat it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a part that I think is so confusing to people, because they're now, I get a lot of questions like, well, how long should I eat this nutritious, healthy food for? And I say, well, we're not doing a diet. We're not doing a cleanse. I'm teaching a lifestyle, which is the same for you as well. It's, that question should actually be like, okay, and not even a question. It's actually like, okay, great. I'm changing my life and I'm going to eat this food, because, for the rest of my life, because I want to be healthy and I want to sustain my health, and not even just sustain where you're at right now, but you want to elevate it to the next level. And then even elevate it beyond that, because you can go from being extremely sick to being the very opposite, so extremely healthy and vibrant and climbing mountains. And you're going to create so much energy through this food as well. Like, you are going to transform your whole entire existence on the planet. So, okay, so with eating too, people are often right now, like, oh, should I eat the cashews, or can I eat certain food? So I find that it's almost like it's become so prescriptive in the world of nutrition that people are losing their intuition as well around food. So what are some tips for people who've arrived at that place? Because people are arriving at that place. We have people who are suffering from orthorexia, where they're afraid to eat food, like even healthy food, because, they almost need someone to tell them it's okay to eat romaine lettuce. It's okay to eat kale. And you know what? Cook your kale. Maybe even try eating the kale raw, but they're so afraid. So what are some tips that you have? I love the one ingredient, no label. Like, that makes it easy for people to know. Eat a salad, because it's living and it's full of life. Eat that. So what are some other tips that you have?
Yeah, those are all really good points. I would say, trust yourself, trust your intuition, and like I'll just share a personal experience. I love dark chocolate, and I always look for chocolate that has stevia instead of sugar.
Yeah.
And now I've gotten to the point where, I've climbed what I call climbing the mountain of health, like you mentioned. And I tell my patients this, that, you might be shopping at 7-Eleven, you might be shopping some store, and then maybe that's where you are. But as long as you keep improving, striving for better food without judgment, just keep going, don't stop, and don't feel like you have to live in the forest and eat berries and,
Yeah.
chew on bark. And so I think that for me, I love dark chocolate. And but then I realized that I was really magnesium deficient,
Mm-hmm.
and because that's where the predominant source of chocolate is magnesium.
Exactly.
And so I noticed that as I got more nutrition, more magnesium in my diet, I don't have. I mean, I like chocolate, and now I use actually dark cocoa nibs, so they're
Right.
no sweetener at all, and they're like sweet enough for me naturally. They're just a bitter. I just enjoy that flavor,
Yeah.
just enjoying the food itself without anything else, and so now I enjoy chocolate, but I don't need it every day.
Yeah.
And it's because my chemistry has shifted. So you have to be observant, and you have to realize that if you want cashews, they sound good to you, have some cashews,
Yeah.
as long as it's whole food, natural, organic, and better than what you were doing before,
Yeah.
it can only help.
And that's where I think that those parameters, I would say, because we like boundaries as humans. We like to know that stop signs mean stop, and that you don't get to just race through there. It makes us all feel safe, and it actually keeps us safe. So boundaries are good. And I like these parameters that you're putting up, because they're broad enough, but not prescriptive. So, whole food. So what is a whole food? So a whole food is something that comes off a bush, it comes off a tree, it comes from out of the ground, it comes off a vine, and it hasn't been processed or manipulated yet. And then that is a whole food. And cooking it does process it for sure, but certain foods you're going to cook, and certain foods you're going to eat raw, and a lot of foods you can eat them cooked and raw. But the fact is, it hasn't been processed in a manufacturing plant and then put in a box or a bag. Those are not whole foods. Even if on the count or on the box it's written whole foods, that's not a whole food anymore. And so that is a really easy parameter to work within. Organic, I find, is a very good parameter as well. And sometimes I like to say organic or not sprayed, because sometimes there's farmers that are in transition, but it's not certified official organic. But that's when you have to ask the farmer that question, like, do you spray your food? Do you treat your food with, the soil with, chemical fertilizers? And so you can ask that of your farmers, but, so aim for organic. I like that. So whole food, organic food, and foods with no labels, one ingredient foods. Easy. You have 350,000 options on the planet to choose from now.
Right.
Right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that is brilliant. I also like the point that you brought out. We only have a couple minutes here, but the that analogy, I just want to bring people back to that, is thinking about how we layer ourselves with clothes and applying that to how we layer ourselves with nutrients, especially the part about comfort, because I think a lot of us do eat out of comfort, right? We are wanting something, we are craving something, we are needing something. A lot of times we just need a hug, but instead somebody will crush a bag of potato chips because, they feel comforted by that. And you can still eat comfort foods. Like a potato is a comfort food, right? But a bag of potato chips, sure, maybe that's comfort, but maybe it's just the potato, that whole food. So you still work within those parameters and you can still have that comfort food. And the other part too that I really like that you said is about understanding the difference between comfort and deficiency, or craving and deficiency, and particularly around magnesium, because we're also magnesium deficient. And what I found with my clients too is once they restore their deficiencies, whether it's the B vitamins, the magnesium, the potassium, these important minerals that our body needs so much of, once you restore that, all your cravings melt away. So if you're someone that is suffering from cravings, what are some suggestions? And we'll wrap up with this because we're almost at an hour, and I know you are busy and have lots to do. So what are some suggestions that you have for people who do have cravings?
Well, with cravings, I would say to really understand, stop for a moment and observe your pattern, of food, like like you just said, like the potato chips, is it really the salt? You know, Maybe it's just getting more salt in your diet, doing a pinch of salt with lemon, a drink in the morning, and then observing, maybe your cravings for potato chips will go away, or eating a potato, like you said. Like I remember a book years ago, Potatoes Not Prozac, and it was like
Right.
that was life changing actually, because I helped
Wow.
develop a drug detox program when I got out of Eastern Medical School, and it
Right.
was life changing, and we taught people that making these protein shakes for the brain, with berries and protective neurotransmitters with the right fats like avocados
Yeah.
could literally change somebody that was addicted to cocaine, and the addictions could literally go away,
Mm-hmm.
and within weeks, literally. And so
Yeah.
I would say the law of substitute is the other rule that I have. Like, if you're eating potato chips, try to find something that's similar. Like what's in the potato chip? Like, well, maybe I like salt, maybe I like potatoes. Well, then just have a potato,
Yeah.
and then it's just a substituting something that's processed for something that's, whole food.
Yeah.
And so, and then go from there.
And maybe it's just the texture and the crunchiness as well. Like it's actually exciting to eat that. That part lights up your brain. Or maybe it's the vinegar. I know for myself, it's vinegar. Like if I'm craving a bag of potato chips, it actually means that I need to have a salad that is made with an apple cider vinegar dressing. And it's, just potential digestive enzymes that I'm needing, and all the other properties that, apple cider vinegars provide. So it's important for people to really and I think you hit the nail on the head there. It is to stop for a moment and observe yourself and just ask the question, what's going on right now? What is it that I need? What do I need help with? And then from there, you can learn so much about yourself. And, a lot of us are not, who are listening to this podcast, you're not living in a country where you are starving. In fact, you could probably, reduce your calorie consumption by a little bit and you'll be fine. And so you do have time to pause, to take a breath, and to simply just observe what's going on in yourself right now. So how can people work with you?
Yes. So basically, I have a clinic, where I see patients all over the world, and occasionally, when people can't come to see me, I send scanners through the mail, and so they're electrical scanners out of Germany, 60 years of research, and
Mhm.
out of Australia. And so these are hand scanners that they just put their hand on the scanner. They hook up to their computer, and then I do a Zoom conference, and then I can find out what they need nutritionally and electrically, what's going on. And we deal with a lot of scars as well. That's something, maybe another topic we could talk about.
Yeah.
But that's another electrical break that people have in their bodies, is scars from tattoos, piercings, injuries, and surgery. And so we put together nutritional programs where we figure out the right diet and lifestyle, and including therapies that we offer here in the clinic. And so we have a therapy clinic as well, all part of the same when we're treating patients and finding out what they need. So it's really a
Amazing.
whole wellness program.
Amazing. So do people have to travel to you then? I guess when COVID is a little bit behind us, then people would travel with you to work with you at the clinic, and then you get them set up with the program, and then they're able to continue doing the work at home, I imagine, because you're teaching lifestyle.
That's right. That's correct. And then I always teach people that, I'm writing a manual for your body so
Mhm.
that you can use this the rest of your life. And once they understand what they need and how their body works, and they become the medical detective, finding the right foods, the right lifestyle, and the right nutrients, then they can apply that for the rest of their lives.
That's amazing. That's a good title for your book, Be Your Own Medical Detective. I like it.
Yes,
What is the title of your book? Do you have one yet?
I do. I'm working on it. It's just basically understanding your body, understanding your life.
That's beautiful. And how can they find you? Instagram, website?
Yeah. So website is summersholistichealth.com. And that's the best place. I also have an app. You can download the app for free. And I have YouTube channel and podcast as well. But go to the website. That's probably the best place to start. Sommer is with an SOMMERS, summersholistichealth.com.
Incredible. So we'll have all the links in the show notes so everybody can find Scott and the incredible work that he is doing. And please, if you have a chronic degenerative disease and illness of any type, please reach out to Scott and, start working with him, because he can set you on the right path to a rich, beautiful, energetic life. Thank you,
Thank
Scott, for
you.
being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then also one thing I forgot was the life-changing health tips is our podcast. So
Life-changing health tips. Perfect.
yep,
I'm going to download that and start listening to it.
perfect.
Amazing. Thanks for being on our show.
Thanks so much. It was really great. It was a pleasure.
Welcome back. As promised, was that not an incredible show with Scott Sommer? He's doing such brilliant work. I really hope that the borders open so that if you are sick and you need help, you're going to be able to make it over to Scott Sommer's clinic and get the help that you need. Now, a few other things that are happening on our end of the world. As many of you know, we did sell our Nutrition and Detox Wellness Center, but the good news is that we are building out our schedule for retreats for next year. We're not going to do anything this year. We want to see how everything unfolds with COVID, if we're going to potentially enter into another lockdown. There's lots of data coming out there showing that even people who are double vaccinated are not able to withstand the side effects and symptoms of the new variants of COVID. So we just want to stay safe, and we want to also keep others safe. So we're not planning any trips this year. But for next year, we have several retreats that we are starting to put together in many locations, such as Hawaii and Bali and Costa Rica. And we really hope that you can join us so that you can dive into our kitchens, get your fingers dirty in the food, and learn all about food as medicine and how you can use this to reverse even the most advanced chronic illnesses. So we'll have more information in the show notes so that you can sign up for our wait list for these retreats. Our retreats in the past always sell out quickly, so you definitely need to get onto that wait list so that you can be included in these amazing healing journeys that we are creating for you. So thanks everyone for listening once again to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. Do what you do. Go out there and share it with people you know, because just that one act alone of pressing forward and send will and can potentially help a loved one reverse their chronic disease, expand their lifespan, and really just get them back to living their ultimate life that they were designed to live. So thanks for sharing this podcast with your friends and family and colleagues at work, and we'll see you again next week.